So I've been noticing lately that therapy is everywhere. It's not just in TV shows and movies. It's also in podcasts and TikToks and memes. And it's kind of to the point where some therapists have become celebrities and household names themselves. So today on the show, how did therapy become entertainment? I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. All right, let's get into it with this.
I think I've got something that could really help you.
Paxil, Lexapro, Xanax, Zoloft? I'll try anything.
Whoa, knock it off, wannabe pill popper. It's a grief journal. Sometimes the pain we feel is too hard to say out loud. This way, you don't actually have to say it.
So that is a therapy scene from the Netflix show Never Have I Ever. Listen, you might have started to notice that when you watch TV these days, it seems like everyone is in therapy, right? Ted Lasso started seeing a therapist. Kelly Mee went to therapy on the reality show Bling Empire. And also professional therapists like Esther Perel and Orna Goralnik are broadcasting their sessions for you to listen into. So therapy seems to be having a pop culture moment these days. And it seems like our relationship to mental health has also gone through some big changes. We're going to talk about those changes with some people who've written about this. Delia Kai is here. Ishani Nath is here. They've both written about this. What's going on, Ishani and Delia? What's going on? Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Ishani, let me start with you on this. You wrote a piece for Refinery 29 that went really deep into therapy and how it's portrayed in reality shows. Why'd you want to do that? Why'd you want to explore that?
I mean, first off, reality TV and mental health are two of the things that I talk about the most, and they're two of my favorite topics to talk about in general.
Yes.
So I feel like it's almost surprising I hadn't written about this in the first place. But in this particular instance, this all started because of Vanderpump Rules and the most recent scandal. It was making headlines a few months ago, and I had never watched the show, so I did a ridiculous thing and went and watched all 10 seasons in the matter of like a month.
A hero.
Would not recommend.
A hero among
Don't
us.
do it. But what I really noticed was, in addition to all these like toxic relationships and chaotic drama, there were these therapy scenes with the cast members going and talking about their problems with a therapist. And it felt like such a weird contrast and just something I wasn't expecting to see on reality TV.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, I realized I had seen it before. Like there's been therapy scenes on Family Karma, Summer House, Bling Empire, Real Housewives. This is not new to reality TV. And it spurred so many questions for me. Like, are those therapy scenes real? Is there a glam squad? Is there lighting? Like, what's the deal? And I guess beyond that, like, can therapy be entertainment? And I guess like better than that is like, should it be? So
right.
I followed all those questions.
The idea of should it be entertainment is something I think about a lot, because it does exact a cost on you when you start to treat something as important as therapy with the sort of lens that you have, that you treat entertainment with. Delia, we're going to talk about this because you recently talked to Esther Perel. Esther Perel has kind of become a household name in her own right. She's got a podcast called Where Should We Begin? And that is like honestly a big part of why therapy has become so popular in entertainment. She sits down with actual people and helps them work through their issues, but also you get to be like a fly on the wall and listen in. Mm-hmm. You interviewed Esther for Vanity Fair. What did she tell you about like the way that therapy's kind of having this mainstream moment?
Yeah, so this was the question I was most interested in asking her, because I was sort of like, in this moment in pop culture, in this moment, especially being online and being on TikTok, like so much of my TikTok has turned into this like mixture of like pseudo self-help, like 19-year-olds telling me how to manifest mixed in. And I listen to them, yes. I'll try anything.
Yeah, sure.
And they're mixed in with, kind of like actual therapists on TikTok giving advice. And so I just wanted to ask her, between this moment in pop culture and on online culture, what do you make of this? Is this good for us? Is this, a good thing overall? And she was sort of very heartened by the fact that she was like, when I was like much younger, this was just a verboten topic. You did not talk about going to therapy. You did not admit that you went to therapy. And so she's like, I think it's amazing that, you know, there are all these conversations happening about mental health, and it's a very normal thing to just dedicate a lot of your time and energy to.
Yeah.
But she did say something that was really interesting to me about just the use of like therapy speak, or what she was saying. She's like, it's just another term for psychobabble. Back in the day, we called it psychobabble, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, you know, I think we sort of use these like therapeutic terms in almost like cudgels, or like kind of like as weapons in, especially in like conflicts with people we're in relationships with, where, you know, we're so quick to say like, you're gaslighting me, or, you know, this is X, Y, and Z. Like, we're trotting out these terms that we learned like online, in terms of like, oh, you know, you're activating my insecure attachment. And it's like, and so she's saying, you know, it's kind of ironic that we're, you know, we have these words to describe experiences and feelings that maybe we didn't have before, but we're also sort of overusing them, and we're using them in a way that kind of shuts down the conversation. Because the minute you're like, hey, you're gaslighting me, there's not really like, that's not open to like sort of conversation. It just sort of feels like you're saying my feelings are super legitimate, yours are not, and that's the end of the story. And so she was saying, you know, I think it's making us more isolated from each other and lonelier, even as we have all this like new vocab. Yeah,
there's something to be said. Oh yeah, go ahead, Ashtani.
I was just going to say, I feel like a huge part of it too is that people don't understand what they're saying sometimes. Like, they'll use these terms, but they don't necessarily know what those mean. Like, we're using gaslighting for everything these days. And right. And it's become almost, maybe the meaning has changed, but its initial meaning, and when we're talking about therapy and like what that looks like in that space, I feel like the way that we use it is not the same.
Yeah, there's something to be said about like the cost that is exacted when you sort of shift the original meaning to become some new social meaning, because we're kind of using gaslighted as like shorthand for deceiving a person, right? Like, and that's
Totally.
we have a word for that. It's called deception. We don't need another one. Gaslighting is sort of its own separate context. But there's something to be said about all of these words that we sort of used to refer to as like a really significant thing, Delia, but now sort of like have all these like sort of cutesy shorthands to them. For example, I see a lot of people talking about mentee-bees, which is like a short for mental breakdown. I see the word delulu in my feed all the time, short for delusional. And it becomes kind of cutesy, but also I'm worried that we kind of like lose the touch of the fact that like these words mean something in a particularly like therapeutic context, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's sort of very, like, I feel like the vocab has kind of made us also just more rigid about like interactions with people. Everything is either a red flag or a green flag, not just like, I don't know, people are weird. You know, like, this is just a quirk. I don't know.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
Ishani, as you did more research into therapy on reality shows like Vanderpump Rules, like you mentioned, but also like Bling Empire, did you find like there was value? Is it useful for people to be airing their therapy sessions?
I'll be honest, like I went into this story expecting to say, you know, we're crossing a line. Therapy should not be on reality TV. These are not two things that should mix. But I did end up actually finding a lot of positives, which was surprising. And honestly, I think the biggest one is destigmatizing mental health. So kind of what we were already talking about. But, you know, that idea that you fear what you don't understand or what you can't see. So being able to see what a therapist looks like, what a therapy office can look like, what that conversation can be like, and the fact that therapy a lot of the time is just a conversation, I think that can really help demystify it for a lot of people. And a lot of these shows are just about everyday people. Like, we're not talking about intervention or like My Strange Addiction here. Like, these are everyday people who are also going and trying to figure out their mental health or getting support. So I think that also has value. And particularly with shows like Bling Empire or Family Karma, where the cast is all underrepresented individuals. Like Family Karma is all Indian Americans. So seeing participants from that show go to couples therapy, like that, as a member of the South Asian diaspora, like we do not talk about therapy, let alone couples therapy. It's very much like, what will people say? That's not a thing that we do. We don't tell other people our business. So getting to see that on a show, and it's so needed, and it becomes so normalized. I think that's a huge it's a huge positive.
I want to talk about the context of the fact that like therapy, at least in this country, in Canada, but also I think to a certain extent in the US, like it's not that accessible to people. It's pretty expensive. So for a lot of people, their only exposure to what therapy is becomes what they see on TikTok, but also what they see on TV. What issues do you see with that, Ishani?
I mean, I think it's really important to remember that mental health is health. And so we need to treat the information that we like get on TikTok or on TV about, say, heart health or diabetes with the same kind of reverence and like take a beat when you're getting mental health info. So they can be great. These platforms are great for raising awareness about different issues, destigmatizing and normalizing these conversations. You need to make sure that you're getting that info from a credible source. So, maybe don't take as much info from 17-year-olds or 19-year-olds. Sprinkle in a real therapist in there. But also remember that these people are giving general information. It's not a diagnosis. So it's really good to be like, oh, hey, maybe that sounds like me or like I relate to that. But then take that step and go see a professional and whatever that means for you. Like there are accessible options. I know like I'm in Ontario and we're in Canada. And so there are no cost options. Granted, there are very long wait lists, but I think it can start that conversation, start that journey for you, but don't just go and treat yourself because you wouldn't do that for diabetes.
I certainly would not. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Commotion. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud, and we're talking about the rise of therapy as entertainment. My guests are writers Delia Kai and Ishani Nath. Okay, there are a lot of different representations of therapy in pop culture, so let's just talk about a few examples. There's a documentary style, right? Well, there's like this therapist like Esther Perel and Orna Goralnik. They air their sessions with real patients. And to me, like I want to talk about those people because there's something really interesting about how Esther Perel has kind of become a star in her own right. Let's take a listen to her show. Here's a clip.
When you pick a partner, you pick a story. And often you will be recruited for a play that you didn't audition for.
Watching her fall in love with someone else was about the most painful thing that I've experienced. And I don't want to do that again.
You can both tell me all kinds of things, and I can listen to each of you. I'm married to none of you. So it's very easy. But you need to reach each other.
Delia, listen, you're a fan of Esther. I'm a fan of Esther. I would say she's just is a celebrity at this point. That is from the new season of her podcast, Where Should We Begin? What do you make of Esther becoming this kind of star? Like, what do you think it is about her that makes her a star?
I think that she really like in the context of our conversation about, kind of like these TikTok authorities, quote unquote, I think what they try to do is to sort of really generalize things and to sort of make it, that's like the whole like point of making a TikTok video. You want it to appeal to as many people as possible. But I think Esther's like approach is always like your situation with like, this relationship is so specific. And so I think she really emphasizes like the unique magic almost of each pairing of each relationship in your life. And so I think that like she brings back the nuance and just really drills home like the nuance and the context that is so necessary to navigate any kind of conflict. And no two conflicts are the same, no two couples are the same. And so I think she kind of brings this like idea of creativity almost into these situations. I mean, like her podcast just goes through like you hear, the wildest kind of scenarios. But I think it really, her work has kind of provoked this sort of curiosity of just like, oh, what are the more imaginative ways that we can solve a conflict or resolve something. I think in one episode, she just had the couple lie on the ground because she's like, it's actually very hard to be mad at someone and yell at someone when you're both lying on the ground, just like physically. And I'm like, I love that, it's like, that's just such an amazing, like kind of quirky thing to pull out of her bag.
Ishani, meanwhile, we asked you to check out Couples Therapy, which is on Crave. Like Esther Perel, that is a real therapist that is working with real couples. What did you think of Orna? What did you make of the show?
Listen, I am so glad you told me to watch the show. I had heard about it, but I am now fully obsessed with it. I can completely see why it's a cult favorite. I think there's something really, really addictive about watching people air out the dirtiest of their dirty laundry.
Yeah.
But also this show somehow makes it feel like not icky. It makes it feel honest and a little bit safe. And a lot of that credit is to Orna and the space that she creates and the questions that she asks. I think what makes couples therapy feel really different and wonderful from like other therapy scenes that we've been talking about is it's made by documentary filmmakers. So it's beautifully shot. And we followed the same couples for an entire season. And so it's this reminder that therapy takes work. It's really uncomfortable. You will change over time. You will respond to different things that are going on. It's not a one and done. I think a lot of therapy scenes make it seem like you go into a therapist's office, 3 minutes later, your life is fixed. And that is so, it's not been my experience. I don't know anyone that's had that experience. And beyond that, I mean, we talked about Orna, like she's so incredible at being empathetic and also like no nonsense at the same time. And what I love about this show is that she also takes us kind of behind the scenes and she takes us to her clinical supervisor and we see her kind of talking through some of the challenges that she's having with clients. And I think pulling back that curtain can really help remind viewers that this is a practice. Like there's a reason that therapists are asking these questions and are trained to help people. It's not the same as like talking to your friend. And I love that like Esther Perel does the same thing a little bit.
Yeah. The thing that you just brought up just now, the idea that you go to this therapy session and then after you leave, it's just like you're fixed. I feel like that's a thing that like a lot of us culturally got from like Frasier. Like I feel like I got that from shows about therapy that sort of fictionalize therapy in this way. And there's a lot more representation of therapy on TV and in dramas and comedies right now. We talked about Ted Lasso, Never Have I Ever, but also there's Shrinking, there's In Treatment, there's Harley Quinn, there's Unprisoned, there's The Patient. I could literally just stand here for 10 minutes and just list shows that have therapists in them now. And like it feels like therapists have become more main characters than they ever used to be. Delia, what do you make of the sheer volume of therapy on screen in terms of how that changes, how that reflects our relationship with mental health?
I think I think it's really interesting as a storytelling advice because in some ways, like when I'm just watching television, I think it's almost like a bit of a shortcut to sort of be like, okay, now we're going to break the fourth wall almost in a way and have this person go to have this character be in therapy. And we're just kind of gonna like really directly address like Davy's issues in like Never Have I Ever or whatever. But I think that like I definitely agree that I think, you know, just at the baseline, seeing therapy on TV helps normalize mental health. Yeah. But I do sort of have this concern where it's like, especially in like kind of like fictional TV or like scripted TV, that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's what we call that. Yeah.
It's made to be a very dramatic thing, like kind of like you said, like they're either in and they're fixed and they're out, or there's this idea of like you don't go to therapy unless you have a really like huge problem, unless your dad died when you were a teenager in front of you, or unless like your marriage is falling apart. Like it's sort of like I feel like therapy comes in these shows as kind of like the like Hail Mary, like Dark Night of the Soul kind of point where it's like, okay, things need to change. And so sometimes I wonder if it creates this impression that like for normal people watching this at home, that there's this idea of like, oh, therapy is kind of a big dramatic thing. It's like a last
like you don't
effort.
meet the bar for therapy kind of thing. Yeah.
And
go ahead.
I was going to say, and like in my own experiences, like it's, you know, therapy is mostly kind of boring and just like having a hard conversation every week, you know?
I think that is a good place to leave it because I actually really want to come back to this, particularly to a conversation about therapy in fiction, in scripted TV shows. But for now, we'll have to leave it there. Delia, Ishani, thank you so much for being here, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Delia Kai is a senior Vanities correspondent at Vanity Fair in New York. You can find her story, Esther Perel thinks all this amateur therapy speak is just making us lonelier, at vanityfair.com. Ishani Nath is a freelance journalist in Toronto. You can find her piece at The Power and Risks of Therapy on Reality TV online at Refinery29.
Go, 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 shorty. It's your birthday. We gon' party like it's your birthday. We gon' sip Bacardi like it's your birthday. And you know we don't get 'cause that's your birthday. You can find me in the club Bottle full of bub, mama.
A bit of Indie Club from 50 Cent. That is off his debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying, released 20 years ago this year. And 20 years in, 50 is still a part of the pop conversation, thanks in no small part to his return as a TV actor, as a TV mogul. He's also one of the biggest trolls on the internet. 50 kicks off his North American tour this week. He's dropping by in Canada. Recently, I looked back on the legacy of Get Rich or Die Trying with veteran hip-hop journalist Jerry Albero. Jerry is also the head of content at Hip Hop DX. Here's a bit of that conversation.
Many men wish death upon me. Blood in my eye, dog, and I can't see. I'm trying to be what I'm destined to be, and trying to take my life away.
Come on! It's the kind of song that I have to be careful with because if I start playing it just like on a walk home, I'm suddenly just like raging in the street. You know what I mean? I'm flipping over mailboxes for no reason. If I'm in the gym, I like will bench way above my actual abilities and that'll hurt my body. Like it is the kind of song that gets you really excited. That is a bit of Many Men off 50 Cent's debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying. We are looking back at the legacy of that album with Jerry Albero. Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this song was inspired by actual attempts on his life, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was the shooting. And then he's had other scuffles that he decided to put on record. Like whether you had actually lived what he went through yourself, many men wishing death upon me, that could have been you as a black man trying to avoid the police. That could have been you trying to duck the court system, trying to get child support out of you. Like any dude from any walk of life could relate to what he was saying in that record. And I think that's what made it so powerful.
Yeah. He does a lot of rap singing on this album. That song is a perfect example of it. Of course, we are now in the era of Drake. We are now in the era of post-Drake. There's lots of rap singing. But at the time, 50 called out Ja Rule for rap singing on lots of hits. He called him out on singing on Always on Time and I'm Real with J-Lo.
And I can't go on without you.
Did you see a bit of hypocrisy in his stance back then about rap singing?
Yes and no, because let's be clear, rap singing was not a new thing. You know, from Curtis Blow on rappers, you know, Mos Def, Fonte, shout out, I mean, Little Brother hadn't been out yet, but he maintained a menace with the rhythm.
Yes.
There was still this foreboding, you know, hoodie up in the alleyway, you know, gun tucked in the waist type of feeling when he was singing. So, and then when he decided he didn't want to go that way, he got someone else to sing it. So I think he did it to show Ja, this is how you do it and still maintain your street cred.
But you know, like the grand irony of all of this is that like we are now in this moment where all the stigma associated with rappers who sing has basically disappeared. Kid Cudi, Kanye, Drake, Future, they all played a big role in making us just kind of very comfortable with rappers who sing. But I have to wonder if 50 didn't open the door for them a little bit in terms of them being like, hey, there is a way to do this and sort of maintain a menacing position if you want to.
Yes. Before, a lot of the rap singing was still tailored to make like a love song. 50 Cent opened the door, I would say, to conveying other emotions in the singing. I'm going to show you my pain, but in a different way. My personal pain, my emotional pain.
So like Hail Mary from Tupac.
Exactly. Tupac definitely needs some credit. And he even said, I want girls to love me like they love Pop.
Yeah. It's 50, a.k.a. Ferrari, F50. Break it down. I got a lot of living to do before I die, and I ain't got time to waste. Let's make it. You say you a gangster, but you never pop nothing. You say you a wankster, and you need to stop fronting. You ain't a friend of mine. You ain't no kin of mine. What makes you think that I won't run up on you with the 9? We do this all the time. Right now we on the grind.
That is 50 Cent with Wanksta off Get Rich or Die Trying. That album turned 20 this year. Before that, you heard a bit of my conversation with about the album's legacy with hip-hop journalist Jerry Albero. This week, by the way, 50 Cent kicks off his North American tour. He's stopping in Canada also. And that is it for the show today. Listen, tomorrow we're going to have a conversation about the writer's strike and the actor's strike. We've had a conversation about this on Friday. This will be a continuation of that conversation because I cannot stress upon you how seismic of an event that is. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. I'm going to be here tomorrow. So if you're going to be here tomorrow, I hope to see you then. Thank you.